Today, I want to talk to you guys about something that is familiar to all of us. It has many names, and among them are agony, anguish, distress, hurt, torment, trauma. All synonyms for pain and suffering. And as we know, pain can be physical, mental, psychological, spiritual, or even a combination of all these things. So unless you're a sadomasochist, you attempt to avoid pain as much as possible. So the title of today's sermon is Finding Purpose in the Midst of Pain. You know, I remember when Stacy had mentioned when Johnny got his surgery, his back surgery, he was in such excruciating pain that he was literally begging Stacy and the nurses to put him out. And it just goes to show that we would rather die than face such excruciating trauma until we feel we can no longer take it. In psychology, there's a theory called the pain versus pleasure principle, and it's based on the notion that all human behavior, including willful sin, is motivated by two things: seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. According to this theory, the ID, or id, which is part of the psyche, resides in the unconscious, and it's the source of instinctive impulses that seek satisfaction. It controls our behavior and pushes us to satisfy our desires for immediate pleasure and gratification. The decisions we make are based on emotions, not logic. Logic does come into play and it affects decisions, but emotions, the way we feel, are always the first step in making a decision. I think we've all witnessed an example of this at the supermarket where this child is having a temper tantrum on the floor because he wants a toy or he wants a candy. And so they scream, they strike their parents, and they're throwing a tantrum. And we sometimes ask our parents, why? Are they spoiled? Or are they just misbehaved kids? Possibly, but they're simply seeking instant gratification, wanting something they desire at that particular moment. So as we grow up, what happens is we tend to indulge in pleasures whenever we get hurt physically and emotionally in order to escape and cope with our situation. These pleasures turn into our coping mechanisms, and all of us deal with pain in different ways. Some like to keep it hidden and bottled up, others turn to food, gluttony, also known as overeating, or some people just don't eat at all. Others use prescription drugs to manage their pain level and their physical and mental ailments. But more often than not, we turn to more destructive methods of managing. We start using alcohol and illegal narcotics as an escape. We turn to sexual pleasures and pornography, and before we know it, they turn into full-blown addictions. And yes, sin does provide pleasure for a season, for that moment, but the long-term effects and consequences can be deadly to both the body and the spirit. 2 Thessalonians 2:12. We read this verse in the Deception series. The Amplified Version says, in order that all may be judged and condemned who did not believe. In other words, those who refuse to adhere to, trust in, and rely on the truth, but instead took pleasure in unrighteousness. Pleasure in unrighteousness. Pleasure in sin. Look at the verse before that, verse 11. It says, so God will cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe his lies. You see, not only can we be deceived in our own thinking, but we can also be deceived in the midst of our pain. We will start believing it's okay, I'm justified in my sin because I've been hurt, I've been wronged. And this thing helps me escape, helps me to deal with my pain. But oh, the enemy loves to show up when you're down and out. Satan is that notorious trench coat vendor in the alley, in that dark alley, and instead of selling fake jewelry and cheap Rolex watches, He offers us every sin under the sun. He says, I see that you're in pain. Don't worry, I got just what you need. Try some of this. Cocaine, meth, heroin. Try some of that. Fornication, adultery, pornography. It's on the house. The first one is free. And we start coming back for more and more, even mixing it up, engaging in sinful buffet of lustful, destructive desires. Remember that the number one job of the devil is to destroy us, and he is constantly using our flesh to accomplish this. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. The NLT version says, don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price. So you must honor God with your body. Oh, but when we're hurt and heartbroken, we tend to defile this temple of the Holy Spirit with sin, and we dishonor God with our bodies in the process. What are the repercussions of this? Let's go a bit forward in the same book for the answer. 1 Corinthians 3:17. 1 Corinthians 3:17. It says, God will destroy anyone who destroys this temple. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. What God gives, He can take away, because He is the Creator, and He is our Master. You know, we've heard the song called I Give Myself Away, and of course it says, my life is not my own, to you I belong. I give myself to you. You see, when we truly give ourselves to Christ, sin no longer has dominion and control over us. Now, does that mean we're not going to be tempted and fall again? Absolutely not. But the difference is we now have power and wisdom, conviction, and authority to fight the flesh. For we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But for those of us that have gone down that dark, rocky road, we have to learn the hard way that no matter how many sinful desires of the flesh we indulge in, our pain remains, and we end up feeling more heartbroken and empty than ever before. We try to fill that void, that emptiness, that heartache with physical pleasures, but we fail to realize that only God can make us whole. Only Jesus can give us that spiritual sanitation that we are longing for. We tend to make the mistake of keeping that pain to ourselves rather than giving it up to God. Jesus said, come to me, all who are weary and carry heavy burdens. I will give you rest. He not only died for our sins, but He also bore our pains and sufferings, our griefs, our weaknesses, our sorrows. So many of us forget this. I know I did. When I was a boy growing up, we were a family of 7, and we grew up on a farm. And my father had a really bad accident shortly after I was born, and he got disabled. He had a fractured ribs, internal bleeding, and spinal injuries as well. So he struggled to provide for us because we were a big family, and we lived in an unfinished home. Me and my brothers, we shared a room, and I saw how my dad struggled. So my mother would even make clothes for us. She knew how to sew. So we grew up on this farm in Mexico, in a small town, and my dad had inherited this farm from his grandfather. And I just remember at a young age, I said to myself, I don't want to end up like my dad. I want to do better, I'm going to be better. And that's where my self-deception started. I had insulin pride, thinking that material things would actually make me better for my father. So I started putting a tremendous effort in school, knowing that a higher education was supposedly give me what I wanted. So I got good grades, top 10% of my class, National Honor Society in the works. And I also set my mind on joining the Air Force. I was raised in the Mormon church, and at that age, 17, 18, they want the young men to go on what's called a mission, which is a 2-year commitment and sacrifice, preaching their word in the gospel, I guess. But I had other plans. I was young and I didn't really understand or even believe the Mormon theology, so to me it was just our faith. It wasn't my own by choice. So just a quick recap here. I said within myself, I'm going to be better than my father. I'm going to be better than him. Does that sound familiar? That's the same thing Satan said to himself about his father. I was self-deceived and had a considerate pride. How sick and deceived was I that I could actually think that I was better than my father based on money and possessions. How lost was I? Galatians 6:3 says, for if a man thinks of himself to be something, he is nothing. He deceives himself. How was I not? I went against my parents' wishes, forcefully implementing my own will and not the will of God on my parents. Ephesians 6:2-3 says, honor your father and mother, for this is the first commandment of the promise. Things will go well for you and you will have a long life on earth. I did the opposite. I disobeyed them, so guess what? Things didn't go well for me. Shortly after graduating basic training, I came home on leave and I met this girl. Her name was Stacy. And I allegedly fell in love, and I knew a long distance relationship was probably not going to work. So I tried to buy her gifts and things like that. I tried to basically buy her affection and love. And it came to the point where I actually started getting her gifts that I really couldn't afford. So I actually started shoplifting and I got caught. And keep in mind, this is in the military. I could have gotten court-martial, sentenced to prison, bad conduct discharge. But even then, God was looking out for me. And what ended up happening is the commander suggested that I receive a discharge under honorable conditions, but to me, it was all dishonorable. I brought shame on myself, on my commander, on my squad. And keep in mind, I was that golden child, that kid that did no wrong, that good kid, so to speak. And when I got home, I couldn't really come to terms telling my parents because I knew it would break their heart. So I made up a lie. I made up a story saying that I had an altercation with my roommate and I had broken his nose. My justification for this was that I would rather them see me as a hot-headed troublemaker rather than a thief. So the lies and self-deception in my life continued. To make matters worse, this girl Stacy ended up getting pregnant shortly after I moved out. So in the blink of an eye, I lost my career, I lost my girlfriend, and I was not even 20 at the time. And these feelings of failure and disappointment kept growing and growing in me. I got a job a few weeks later at a call center, and then I had another woman. Her name was Jasmine, and I also fell in love. So this is where the cycle of fornication started for me. We moved in together a few months after we met, and she ended up cheating on me after a few years. So then all those emotions, I added anger, resentment, the hurt of betrayal, feelings of inadequacy were just added to the other lies and lists that I had accumulated. And of course, what the saying, what starts as lust ends in lust, and that's exactly what happened. I went on to have several other games and one-night stands, using sex and pornography to deal with all my mixed feelings and emotions that I had piled up. I had even betrayed a friend of mine and slept with his wife while we were separated. But the worst was yet to come. I went back to school, I went back to that lie and back to my original plan of being financially successful and prosperous. I began to study law and criminal justice, and I enjoyed it, but it was almost as a hidden, desperate plea to redeem myself in the eyes of the world, since I had already been categorized as a military reject and a thief. So I also started working security, and while going to UTEP, I met another very nice woman. She was kind of shy, quiet, but she was very loving, unselfish and sweet. And we also moved in together shortly thereafter, and I brought all my emotional baggage with me, and so did she. I remember that she struggled daily with the loss of her mother, because before she passed, they had an altercation, they had an argument, and they had a strained relationship. So she carried that guilt and that pain of not having reconciliation with her, the peace and the forgiveness with her mom. So she seemed into a deep depression, and she started using sleeping pills, and she was actually later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And the moods, the mood swings and the attitudes due to her illness really put a lot of stress in our relationship. The side effects of her medication, they were just making it worse, and they were actually not helping her at all. She actually developed an addiction for sleeping pills, and I remember her saying that she loved to sleep because that's the only way she escaped from having to think, having to deal with her constant emotional and psychological struggle. And since I was living in sin, I didn't dare to pray for her or myself. I felt so dirty, so filthy, with sin unworthy of God. I literally felt that I had sinned God's grace, so my misery continued. We had constant arguments and fights regarding our finances, accusations of infidelity and jealousy. Months later, we found out that she's pregnant, and due to our economic struggles and the medication she was taking, and my deep and rooted fear and feelings of not being ready and being a capable father, I convinced her that the best thing to do was to have an abortion. And regretfully we did. And it seems that things just got worse from there. Her job performance at work started declining, and they found out at her job her medical condition, and so they fired her. And that just made the depression worse. So the bank started hounding her for her car payment, threatening possession. We had trouble paying the rent, we fought a lot. And I remember one argument that had extended the next day. I had gone to work working a 12-hour shift, and I made it a point to ignore her all day. And when I got home, not to my surprise, she was asleep. Still mad and upset, I decided to sleep in her daughter's bedroom that night, and she had gone away to her dad's house that night. And when I woke up the next morning to get ready for school, I noticed her body was halfway off the bed, and there were several empty bottles of medication on the floor. She had overdosed on all her medication, and she wasn't breathing. When I started to do CPR, I cried out, "No, God, please don't do this. Don't take her. Punish me, not her, please." It was too late. Lord God, I took her death solely on my conscience, and I said, "It's my fault. I killed her. I led her to her death. I didn't love her enough. I didn't help her. I wasn't patient enough with her. I didn't understand her. I even killed our own child. I killed her from the inside out." I remember that I constantly feeded my thoughts, my evil thoughts through rock music and writing dark, sinister poems, and I want to share one of them with you just so you can get an idea of what my mindset was. I wrote, feeling dead inside, but on the outside, still alive. I can no longer stand this excruciating pain. It feels like I was going insane. What the F is this life for? When there's nothing to live for anymore. God, why have you taken her, my love, my life? Why couldn't you just take me instead of my life? You saw her sick, you didn't seem to care. Why her, Lord? It's just not fair. So this notion of bringing God for our predicaments is nothing new. And I'll get back to that in a minute. So I constantly listened to songs that promoted and glorified suicide, and I got to the point that I had decided that I was going to take my own life. The enemy had my ear, and he was constantly whispering the lies and going to hell anyway. It's over. This is the way out of your misery. I was so far gone and out that I had even coined a new phrase that I had repeatedly said to myself, I devise my own demise. I devise my own demise. In other words, I contrive, I plan my own death, my own destruction. So I put a loaded 45 in my hand, and I put it to my temple. I'm about to pull the trigger, and I hear this calm, serene voice that says, stop. I knew who it was. So my knees and the gun hit the floor. I said, God, save me from myself. I have become now what's heaven. I seek my own death. Save me from myself, please, Lord. And I just started going through my whole life. I told him everything evil that I had done, all the sins that I could remember even since I was a kid. And for the first time in my life, I was actually honest with God in prayer. And towards the end of the prayer, I felt this supernatural force. It's very hard to explain, but those of you that have witnessed it know what I'm talking about. All the things that were holding me down, keeping me from having a relationship with Him, I felt this unexplainable peace, this serenity that no words could possibly describe. That night, God had done some spiritual surgery within me, and it changed my life completely. Growing up in the church, I would hear scripture like Romans 8:26 that says, the Holy Spirit intercedes for us with groanings that cannot be expressed in words. And another like Psalm 51:17 that says, the sacrifices of God that God desires is a broken heart and a contrite spirit. Those two scriptures came to life, and I was finally able to understand them by experiencing them myself. I'm going to go ahead and go to John 11. And for those of us that are familiar with the story, Lazarus, Martha and Mary's brother, was sick, and they had sent a message to Jesus. They didn't know that he was sick. And by the time Jesus got back to Bethany, Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days. And this is what Mary and Martha said to Jesus. Let's start reading in verse 20. It says, then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary still sat in the house. Then said Mary unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, if you would have been here, my brother had not died. What is she saying here? Let's jump to verse 32. This is Mary. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. What are they literally saying here? Jesus, it's your fault. God, this death is on your hands. You let this happen. Let's read verse 33 through 35. It says, when Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And then he said, where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. Verse 38, it says, Jesus therefore again, groaning within himself, came to the grave. It was a cave, and the stone lay upon it. Jesus said, take away the stone, Martha. The sister of him that was dead saith unto him, the Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead for 4 days. Jesus said unto her, said I not unto thee, that if thou wilt believe, thou shalt see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where he was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always, because of the people which stand by, I said, and they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when thus hast spoken, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus said unto him, loose him and let him go. Then many of the Jews came to Mary and had seen these things which Jesus did. We tend to think that God can help us, that it's impossible, that it's out of his reach, even in death. But Jesus wants us to know this: no matter what situation you are in, there is hope. Let's read in the same chapter, verse 4. It says, when Jesus heard this, in other words, after they had let him know that Lazarus was sick, he said, this sickness, in other words, this problem, this situation, your pain, your suffering, your test, your trial is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified. So we would rather believe than lie and respond like Thomas. Verse 16, it says, then Thomas, which was called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples said, let us go also, that we might also die with him. Can you believe that? We let doubt and unbelief and hopelessness take over, but we forget what Jesus said in verse 25. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, shall live. You see, Lazarus was not the only one that was resurrected that day. It was Mary, Martha's, and the disciples' faith in Jesus. So when we lose faith, we decide to remain entombed in our sorrow, refusing to roll away the stones of doubt and unbelief. We stay bound in our pain because we do not believe. Going back to my story, it all started with me with self-deception, with covetousness and pride, and we just read this scripture of John 11 when I thought all was lost, when I thought it was the end for me. God gave me a new beginning. When I saw death, God gave me new life, meaning and purpose. And I just let all the things, all the sorrow, all the pain, just snowballed into so many things after that. But notice that it started with self-deception, and it just caved in right after that. There was a domino effect there. And of course it brought on sin, and sin is a cancer that breeds and breeds and leads to destruction. And rather than trying to redeem myself in the eyes of God, I look to redeem myself in the eyes of the world first. This world would only judge and not forgive you or forget for the things you've done. God, on the other hand, offers forgiveness and no condemnation through sincere repentance. But still, I chose to be a criminal, not for breaking the laws of the world, but for breaking the laws that truly matter, God's laws. You know, we got it so backwards, we're more obedient and submissive to the laws of this world than to the laws of the Creator of the world. How messed up is that? And what's even more ironic, that my name, Daniel in Hebrew, means God is my judge. Listen, the key was in the meaning of my own name. I should have been fixated with what God sees and thinks of me rather than gravitating to the false lies that the world tells us that without money, without a career, without possessions, we're nothing. I didn't know who I was. Talk about being deceived. Rather than having an attitude of gratitude for what I had, or what my parents had given me, I desired more. God provides for our needs, not our fleshly wanted desires. I had to find out the hard way that being grateful and content with what I have is the key to happiness. I really had no idea what it truly means to be poor, to be hungry, to be in need. God had to empty me of my pride and to humble me so I could realize this. I'm actually the only one in my family that has a bachelor's degree for real. I earn a lot less money than I was. You know what? I'm okay with that. I don't care about anything this world has to offer now, be it money, possessions, or career. You know, in preparation for the sermon, God revealed to me that for almost 10 years, I have been a security guard with an unguarded insecurity. Talk about an oxymoron. An unguarded insecurity means an undefended, careless, lack of confidence, or self-doubt. What was this insecurity? The fear that one day I would be a father and I wouldn't be able to provide for my family as a man, as the head of the household. That was my fear. You see, I wasn't counting on or depending on God's help and substance, but rather on my own efforts and abilities. It wasn't until I came to this place of purpose, and learned the truth on how to find my authentic self. And just last year, I gathered the courage to confess and apologize to my dad, thinking that I could have been better than him. I actually told him that I could think of no other profession than that of a farmer that is honest and humble and hardworking. And when you think about it, I think it's the only career where you literally live off of God's creation. The crops, the land, and the animals, the livestock he raised. I actually miss that simple lifestyle. And with that, if you watch this, I just want to thank you for forgiving me and showing me when the non-statement itself. I also learned that the most important thing is not worldly knowledge that you can get from studying a university book, but rather wisdom in God's holy word. You go to college having to study and read all these books. You know, the Bible, it literally serves as a guide. It's the unadulterated truth. It's a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path, offering a solution to all the things that we face daily. There is no other book like it. Nothing compares to the Bible does. So how is it that a self-deceived, insolent, prideful, covetous, disobedient fool, a forger, a thief, a liar, a fornicator, a murderer, and adulterer receive salvation? Only with the grace and mercy of God. Titus 2:11-12 says, "For the grace of God has been revealed, bringing salvation to all people." And we are instructed to turn from godless living and sinful pleasures. We should live in this evil world with wisdom, righteousness, and devotion to God. So the question remains, why? Why do we still have to go through all this adversity, all of this suffering? Well, in my case, that was the one way I was able to see the light and change. I chose to do it my way, the hard way, instead of God's way. Even though everything I went through was my own doing, my own mess, my own self-inflicted pain, God was able to use all of it for my good and His glory. Let me use an analogy that explains this question also. In competitive running, runners typically experience what's called a runner's high, where their own bodies produce endorphins, hormones that block pain and enable you to experience euphoric feelings. And they're released during strenuous exercises. And these natural hormones, these endorphins, actually help treat depression and other psychological disorders. Running, although painful at times, helps us increase our endurance, feel less fatigued, depressed, and tense throughout the day. In the sports world, there's a famous saying, no pain, no gain. What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, if you have a very small threshold for pain, you're in the wrong line of business. If you think about it, athletes have to train and practice and exercise constantly in order to get better at the respective position. And in that, they have to experience pain when hitting the weights, taking blows, fouls, punches, kicks, you name it. Their muscles grow stronger and their bodies are better equipped to take the pounding because of the time they put in the gym and on the practice field. Practice field is perfect. They're able to shape and develop their bodies and technique, and all these things place a strain and pain on their bodies. And they have to endure it in order to remain successful in sports. In our faith and walk with God, it's no different. We have to constantly go through trials and tests, storms, heartbreak, and heartache, going through tremendous amounts of pain. But when we overcome these experiences, we come out on the other side with a bigger, stronger spiritual life. And when problems and trials come, we are better equipped to weather the storms and come out victorious because we have already several trials under our spiritual belts. I think Paul summed it up best in Romans 5:2-5, and it says, because our faith, Christ has brought us into this place of undeserved privilege where we now stand and confidently and joyfully look forward to sharing God's glory. We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength and character. And character strengthens our confidence, hope for salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment, for we know how dearly God loves us, because He has given us the Holy Spirit to fill our hearts with His love. But we tend to question that love. We tend to question God's love, especially when we go through something that's out of our control, something that's not our fault. I'm talking about sexual molestation, a rape, a betrayal, the loss of a loved one, an accident, an illness, PTSD, the aftermath of war, all these things. But then, I think sometimes we're so distraught and engulfed in our pain that we fail to realize that the power of our purpose is in the place of our pain. What do I mean by that? The power of our purpose is in the place of our pain. What I mean by that is that one experience, that one tragedy, that loss, that assault, that traumatic event in our lives that caused us the most heartache and heartbreak in our lives, we should be using it to set others free because we're still alive and breathing today. And whether or not you want to admit it or accept it, God pulled you through it. You should be witnessing to everybody that has a mirror saying, yeah, I went through that. I went through this. But God used it for my good, and I give him the glory. I think there's no better example of this than our very own pastor. For 17 years, he hated God. He didn't want anything to do with him. He went through all the pain, all the suffering in the church, losing his first marriage, and all the terrible experiences he had, so that when he lived, he would come back to his father's house at the prodigal son after getting a bitter taste of the world, eating pig slop, and coming back to serve the Creator. Guys and gals, please don't be embarrassed or ashamed to share your testimony. Because you just never know when the person right next to you is going through identical or similar situation, and you need words of hope and life to keep them going. We sometimes tend to overcomplicate witnessing to people, thinking that we have to sound religious and quote scripture by heart, but we really just need to talk about what God has done for us in our lives. What He's delivered us from, because we just never know when we can literally save a life and bring the soul to Christ. And that's what God's kingdom is really all about. When we're going through the muck and mar that life throws at us, we tend to feel alone and isolated. We tend to think that nobody could possibly understand what we're going through, the things we've done, the things we've seen. But thank God that we have a high priest who sympathizes with our weaknesses and was tempted in every way just as we are. And only God can turn a mess into a message, a test into a testimony, a trial into a triumph, and a victory into a victory. I think we also like to get ourselves thinking that when we actually do start living godly lives, everything's going to be fine. That's when the real attacks come. And I want to share a scripture, one of God's many promises, 1 Peter 1:8-9. And it says, "Blessed be the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again into a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is incorruptible and undefiled, and that doesn't fade away, reserved in heaven for you. We are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. Wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through many temptations, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found into praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ, whom we have not seen, we love, in whom we now have not seen, yet we believe, we rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving again in faith, even the salvation of your souls." Stacy created a book, Women of Purpose, and she wrote something really powerful. And said, "God never promised the absence of storms in our life, but He does promise to walk with us, live through them, even when storms are our only doing." Sometimes we feel that God is hard on you and doesn't love you. The truth is, He loves you too much to keep you where you are. And my last piece of advice, guys, is be honest with God, especially in prayer life. And what I'll share one more scripture. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. It says, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear you. That separates us from God, our sins. I remember the biggest sin that plagued my life was fornication. And I remember I prayed to God after that supermarket experience to show me the truth, because I grew up in false religion. And God showed me that. And I kept praying, and God showed me a house of worship I can take my family to. But I had my wife Daniela, and even though we had kids and I considered her my wife, I was still living with fornication. And it wasn't until I actually got married that same day God answered my prayers and said, John. And what's crazy is I shared this testimony before. Overnight, even invited to our wedding. Stacy was a long-lost friend of my brother's, and he had mentioned to me that Stacy had a lot of talents, and she was a photographer as well. And our wedding was such low budget that we didn't have enough money to purchase a photographer. Even my entire wedding ceremony, I made it a point to give glory and honor to God. Our entire playlist was worship songs, and when John shared his testimony with me, I was just so blown away, because God answered my prayer that same day. The same day that I wanted to stop behaving in the flesh and actually become official and give me money. God answered my prayer. Guys, I've grown so much spiritually here, and you guys have blessed me in so many ways, and I just can't thank you enough for that. Thank you, guys. Let's go ahead and move in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, that you use all things, the good, the bad, to work together. We thank you, Lord, that your mercy and your grace is new every day. Help us to get rid of our pride, our shame, and help us be honest with who we are, because only you can do the best work. We can do that spiritual surgery within us. Empty us, Lord, of our pride, of our self-deception, of our anger, of our unforgiveness, of all the things that are keeping you out of true relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen.